this. So hi, I'm David Teal, and we're talking with Chris Forrest tonight. It's a pretty clever project that he actually brought to us. I'm going to let him talk about. Hopefully you've all had a chance to get into Blackboard and take a look at things. We'll have an idea of hopefully what tools you need, what kind of materials you're going to be using, and hopefully a couple of you have actually started. Chris will walk you through any questions that you have immediately about this. If you don't have a way to use your microphone, you can go ahead and use the questions bar and type it there, and I can go ahead and look at it that way also. Chris, I think it's just as easy to turn it over to you and let you know, or let you tell everybody how you decided to do this project, why it's unique, and a little bit of what you learned in the process.
Sure. Hey everybody, this is my first webinar ever, so it's gonna suck, but we'll get together. I mean, this project started out years ago when I wrote the book, The Anarchist Tool Chest, which is about building a tool chest with no compromises, with dovetails all around, and really traditional joinery, and making it last for 300 years. And Kevin Ireland, who he's basically the publisher, the group editorial leader for Popular Woodworking, came to me and said, "Chris, that's great. Why don't we do this for a video?" And I was like, "Okay, sure, we can do it for a video, but it will take X thousands of hours to put this video together, and it would be very expensive to show what is essentially a at least 40-hour project, detailed in the way that it needed to be detailed." And he said, "Well, that's really that's great, but I don't think that will work. I don't think we could 12 DVD set on building a box." And so we got to brainstorming about it, and one of the things that came up time and again when I was doing my research for this book was there were a lot of tool chests out there that were not built using these old ironclad, old school joinery rules. There were a lot of existing tool chests in the archaeological record that had been built using what we would consider to be kind of farmer joinery, farmer tan joinery, let's say, like nails. Yeah, that's a good picture, David, of me with all those projects, which we detail in the videos if you haven't seen them yet. The one on the bottom is all nailed together, and that one I got from Thomas Lee Nielsen. I traded him a piece of really nice furniture for that piece of junk. That thing has stayed together for at least 100 years. And you'll see that the trays in it the sliding tills are just made out of an old hay for sale sign that says, hay for sale. And they chopped it up and turned it into the tills, but it works really well. And then the one above it is supposed to look like a mahogany joiner's or gentleman's chest. And it's actually made out of, I think, orange crates or apple crates. And they just kind of faked it all up. But the real thing that's interesting about these is not that they were these kind of chests that look fake, but that they really do their job. And both of them are more than 100 years old and have seen, as you can see from the photo, more than 100 years of service and are still just as tight as the day they were made. And so that got me thinking about what we could do with modern materials and modern joinery to make something, because not all of us have 40 to 80 hours to spend on a dovetail tool chest. So, I sat down with Sketchup for many hours and tried to come up with something that would really work, something that I could build out of one sheet of half-inch shop grade birch, 3/4 inch shop grade birch, and just some, that kind of crap, and some, poplar dimensional stock. And I was actually extremely pleased with the way it came out. I just yesterday finished up putting on in some of the tool racks that you're going to see in these videos that are only for this webinar. I shot like a whole day of video showing some of the inside details and how they go together. But I just finished those up, and I was really actually quite pleased, which I didn't expect to be, with the way this chest has held up over the last few months. And the way it looks is, except for that big plywood scar on there on the lid that you can see right now, There really aren't a lot of raw edges, and the thing is really can take a beating. I've dropped it several times, taking it down to the basement. So it's really a good chest, and if you follow the instructions in the DVD and on this here webinar, I think you're going to find that this is really something that's going to outlive you for sure. Here we can see some of the interior construction details and all the tills which were nailed together. You know, they slide on the runners here. That's all included in the the half-inch of shop grade birch and 3/4 inch shop grade birch. You don't need to go out and buy a bunch of additional stuff. In fact, I had enough left over to make racks for fiber chests. And one thing I do want to say about the tills, and I know I'm just blathering here because nobody has had a question, and that's cool. And by the way, I'm not wearing anything. I am completely buck naked. But that's just how I do webinars, the Sasquatch mode. But the other thing about this is, you know, I didn't talk about this in the Anarchist Tool Chest in the book, but I actually think this is an important point, is that in a lot of chests I've seen that these tills that slide back and forth are usually nailed together. You see some that are dovetailed together, and I dovetailed mine for the book, of course, because I was going all out. But really, it's the bottoms rag out way before the dovetails rag out, and so you end up, you know, replacing the tills way before you have to do anything with the dovetails. So, you know, nailing those tills together is actually something that, because of this I've started doing with the tool chest that I'm building for customers. You know, it saved me about a day of time in the shop, and they work just as well. And if you nail and dovetail them, nail and glue them correctly, they'll really last a long time. So now this chest right now, you can still see some of the raw edges, but we painted over those, and we also puttied them. What else do we here to see? Yeah, there's the lid again. And paint is the way I would go with this. Yeah, this is another thing that you're going to see in the DVD is we used a lot of screws, almost a whole box of them to put this thing together. So it's not going to pass through a metal detector at any TSA site. And then these plugs, which we drove into the countersinks, are stuff you can buy at Home Depot. You can buy it like $3 for 100 of them, and then you plane those flush, and you can't even tell. I have it all painted in, and you wouldn't even be able to tell from 10 feet away that it wasn't a dovetailed chest. So the plug method is it's definitely a good way to go. Wait up now, I have to take a sip of beer. Y'all talk amongst yourselves.
We have had a number of folks join in since we started, actually, and I just want to reiterate, if you've got questions, there's a questions panel on our dashboard, if you will, that's on the GoToWebinar program. Just go ahead and click on that, the questions bar. Go ahead and type your question in, and then when I see the question pop up, I can open your microphone, or your phone be open, so you can go ahead and we'll get to hear your voice when you can ask a question, all right? Chris, you touched a little bit, or we started to talk, the extra videos. What are we going to learn from those pieces that they'll be getting? I guess Monday is going to put them up live?
Yeah, I think so. That shot back there was David trying to shoot down my shirt, and I don't have any cleavage, though I'm willing to show. Yeah, I shot 3 videos yesterday. One of them is all on the kind of tool holding that you can add to these chests, which actually wasn't covered very heavily in the book. And as you can see, here's the chest that is not covered in the DVD. It's in the background while I'm working. And if anybody here in the webinar needs like a SketchUp drawing of this Dutch chest, I'd be happy to send it to you. My email is listed on the welcome screen, and I'm happy to send you a SketchUp version. And it's going to be in the next upcoming issue of Popular Woodworking Magazine. Is that going to be the October issue, I think? We're going to show 2 versions of this Dutch chest, which is really built on the same principles, which is just glue and screws and cleverness. But anyway, what we're going to be covering in the video is how to trick out the interior of the chest like this one, so that you can pack in an absolute metric buttload of tools into a small space. And one of the things that I experimented with over the years is like what spacing to make the racks on. Here you can see the saw tills. In just a minute, I have to burp. All right, much better. And so you're going to have these, how to make these saw racks that attach to the underside of lids. And I show you in these videos that we're going to show you just for the webinar attendees how to make the world's most dirt simple saw till rack, which is one piece of a 1x4 that is 4 inches long and screwed to the underside of your chest. And that really can handle. Man, boy, I'm gassy. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm glad this is being recorded for posterity. Oh, and I see we lost an attendee. So
going to go to the outtakes video, Chris.
Yes, exactly. I'm touching myself. So we have this saw rack here, and there are lots of different saw tills, some that I recommend, some that I don't. So you're going to find out how to make saw tills, and these are for panel saws, and we're also going to be doing them for back saws. And then also, as you can see back there, the little leather thing, I did a separate video on how to use leather accessories, not a ball gag, but like just, you know, how to take real basic pieces of scrap leather that you might have left over from, you know, lining or chops of your vices with leather, and how to either rivet it or sew it so that you can make little. That's kind of a nerdy pocket protector. I mean, if it had a slide rule, it would be perfect. But I love these things, and how to make one for a block plane, and how to use one that could be for carving tools or for all the other little tools that you can make little slings and stuff for.
Cool.
And then the last thing, the third video I did, which is on the hardware and hardware options that you have. And I don't know if we have any photos of hardware here on to show you, but you know, how to pick different kinds of lifts. Yeah, well, here's where we're dumping all the casters in citric acid. And you know, this citric acid really only goes so far. We took a bunch of home center stuff and made it look pretty good, and it's even looking a lot better now that we're like a month or two after the shoot. And so we took this Spicy World citric acid. They don't pay me to say that, but I just love to say it. Spicy World. And we stripped all the zinc off of it with the citric acid, and it looks pretty awesome. But what I tried to do in this other video that you're going to see here that's going to be put up on Monday is, you know, what other options do you have besides the home center hardware? You know, if you don't use the home center butt hinges, you know, can you, what else should you look at? And so I look at strap hinges, I look at blacksmith-made hinges, and look at some of the extruded brass butts like you might get from Horton or Lee Valley, the really nice stuff. We also look at all the different kinds of lifts. So you need a chest lift. It goes on the end of the chest so that you can pick it up. And so we look at, you know, brass chest lifts, and you can almost see one on the end. These are the kind of the farmer tan lifts that we got for like $6 bucks. But you can buy some really nice brass lifts. And then if you don't like metal or you can't afford it, I also show you how to make some scrap ones out of mahogany and then out of a stick of oak. And all those work really well. And then we look at locks and the different kinds of locks that you can use. Anything from a simple hasp with a padlock and where to get, you know, a good padlock, which I definitely recommend eBay. I can get blacksmith-made locks off eBay for $10 all day long. And then, you know, a simple half mortise lock. I really don't recommend full mortise locks for this project. A full mortise lock is a real pain in the butt to install on something that it really doesn't need to be all that, you know, all that fancy. And then finally, what we call a grab lock or a crab lock. And these are the kind of fancy chest locks that you would see in the 17th, 18th, and early 18th centuries. And there's a company that still makes them in Germany. It's really awesome. And they're about, and that shows the hasp and the padlock there on the front of that. But the grab locks are really quite nice. And Whitechapel Hardware carries those. And they're about $100, but they're way, way cool. They have a bunch of hand filing on them. And if you want to go all the way, we talk about you can get a grab lock or a crabble from a blacksmith, someone like Peter Ross, who you might spend $300 or $400 for the lock, but that's a little over the top, and I only do that when I have a customer who pays for it. But the $100 grab lock's cool. And as far as supplies goes, you know, my email's on here on the welcome screen. It's chris@lostartpress.com. And if you have any supplying questions, you know, definitely just shoot me an email. I'm going to be teaching next week at Kelly Mailers, but I'm always happy to answer email either on or offline through this thing. And I'm going to check in every night, but if something is bugging you or you don't get it, you know, just shoot me an email and I'll get back to you within the day.
We have actually a question, Chris, from Keith Engelhardt. I'm going to go ahead and open your mic, Keith, and then I'll let you ask your question. You should be able to talk.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello, everybody, and Chris, thanks for doing the webinar. I appreciate it. I do have a question. I just built a 6-board chest, kind of stimulated by one of your blogs, and as I look at this now, this tool chest, how is this different, other than obviously the tricked out interior? Is it much different than a 6-board chest?
You mean, should you get asked for your money back?
I don't mean that.
I don't. So, no, Keith, this is actually what's quite different about this chest compared to what we would call a boarded chest is that tool chests, after about the Viking period, had their grain running continuously, horizontally through all the case. So the 6-board chest that you built, if you looked at the entries, is that the ends have vertical grain,
Right.
and the front and the back have horizontal grain. When you build a tool chest, what we call a strong chest, like this, the grain runs horizontally all around, and that, you know, in this case it doesn't matter so much because we're using plywood, but in other cases it would matter because of wood movement, and you wouldn't have the same sorts of issues that you would with that 6-board chest. Also, you know, this is going to have a bottom that is a little different than the 6-board chest, and skirts at the top and the bottom. I mean, the chest is a chest is a chest, but this one is it's a little different because of grain orientation. And the idea with these was not to get them off the floor. That was the whole idea with the boarded chests, was to get them off the floor so that they rot, because they were on dirt floors. And these were somewhat allowed to rot, I guess, because they weren't as important. They were holding tools instead of linens. So yeah, it's a little bit different. But there are a lot of similarities too. I mean, that we're using very basic, straightforward joinery, and trying to discard ideas about wood movement.
Chris, I'm going to ask you something that I never thought I would. We're actually got a little bit of a hard time hearing you. If you can get a little closer to the microphone.
Wow.
I know.
I know. That is this bad.
A little bit, and then maybe Tom, if there's a way that there's some adjustment there. But Chris, you're a little quieter than the rest of us, so I didn't do it. I swear.
Yeah. How about this? Is this any better?
That is a little better. Yes, thank you.
Okay. I switched microphones, and I do appear to be getting some more bars here. So.
Okay, cool.
If you can't hear me, let me know. I apologize for that. That's weird. Usually you should be able to hear me without even the microphone from here.
Bob says it's much better, yes.
Okay, I apologize.
And actually, Bob has a question, but he doesn't have a mic, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. He says he wants to build this tool chest as his first, but he's been thought about taking bits from the original tongue and groove bottom and panel lid. Is it worth the effort to try and do tongue and groove?
That's, you know, I would love to add tongue and groove bottom just because it looks better than the plywood bottom, but that's kind of an aesthetic choice. The funny thing is that my original chest has a tongue and groove bottom, and it also everything's beaded too, so it's this really tricked out bottom, which I love a tricked out bottom. But they you can't see them. I mean, once you put the tools in there, it's like the back of your bookcase. It's totally covered in books. That's a lovely picture. Is that, yeah, you picked those, Teal. Is that you can't see the bottom, and so that there's no functional benefit. There's an aesthetic benefit because you'll know it's there. I mean, every time I pick up my joiner plane, I can say I have a tongue and groove bottom down there. Dang it. As far as the lid goes, The real point of the lid is to make it sturdy. I mean, you know, some early lids, like Benjamin Seaton's tool chest, his lid was just one panel and of pine, and it cracked. Not only under just the time of moving, but just from people sitting on it or putting stuff on it. And so really the point of the lid and the Anarchist tool chest, and this one too, was to make it a thicker sandwich so that you can do other things on it. I mean, this is, you know, this at least 3/4 of an inch thick throughout the entire lid. And here you can see with the dust seal and the 1/2 inch panel is that it is so like unbelievably sturdy that you can dance on it, and you can assemble on it, and you can put a carcass on it, you can dump stuff on it. So there's no worry about that. So if you use this process or you use the lid that's on the in the book, is you're going to have the same result, which is that it's sturdy. The only thing that's different is really the appearance on the inside. The inside of the plywood chest doesn't look as nice. And if I were keeping this plywood chest forever, I would probably eventually, you know, hammer veneer a panel of you know, mahogany with, you know, stringing or whatever around it just to sex it up, because it is pretty bland looking. Or paint a barbarian librarian holding somebody's head with a big bloody sword.
Hey, well, we've got this picture up from the SketchUp thing. For folks who haven't, I'm going to open an image. This is one of the optimization charts, and something that actually Chris had done that I hadn't seen before. No surprise there. But there are tabs at the top that open up the different panels that will show you the different images that are there. The overall view, the carcass view, skirts, lid, the 2 optimization charts, and the interior shots. So if you haven't worked with SketchUp before, you may overlook those tabs initially, but they'll give you the different views, and this is what we're seeing here. We're seeing the different aspects that are in that SketchUp program, and it's Chris, a really nice job. Thank you.
That's what we do. Yeah, if you have any problems with the SketchUp program, let us know, and we'll be happy to either make screenshots of what you need. I can do pretty quickly if you know, Tom or David aren't available.
Yep.
But it's a pretty simple program. It's definitely worth your while to get the basics, because you can really, you know, you just use, even if you don't draw in it, you can use other people's plans to get a lot of really good information out of it. So
yeah, and for everybody else's benefit too, the images that we're using it's just a simple slideshow. I'll put these up on Blackboard tomorrow as well, so you can pull these down as individual photos if they're helpful too. Chris, we have another question from Bob. Says, what about battens on the bottom?
Yeah, we didn't put battens on the bottom of this one, and that's a really good question. The reason I didn't is because I put casters on the bottom. And so the original chests and a lot of old chests had, you know, 2-inch wide battens, you know, just little strips of wood that were screwed or glued to the underside of the chest. And the purpose of those battens was to serve as sort of an early warning system. It was the dew line for, well, dew, is that they would rot out before the other parts of the chest would. So you might have a few extra months before the water would leach the rest of your chest. So if you have some extra stock, or if you're, you know, they're a good idea. If you don't have casters, they're definitely a good idea. You don't want this sitting on the bare floor, especially if you're in like a concrete garage or something. You know, one of the things that tool chests do better than almost any other tool storage system I've used is they protect them from moisture and dust. And if you set this on a cold, wet, you know, concrete floor, you're defeating half of the use of the chest. So yeah, I mean, I probably, if I were building this again, and I would put battens on it, and especially if we weren't putting casters on it, I would put battens on it.
Okay. We have a check. I think Nick Cook, you had a question. You had your hand up. Did you have a question, Nick?
No, sir.
All right. Good enough. Well, just want to make sure everybody gets the chance to say or ask their question. We don't have any other questions right now, Chris. How many of these have you actually made of this type of thing, or are you using the one that you started with originally? How's the success rate, I guess? How are they holding up?
Well, I made, a few good ones for people. Since I wrote the book 2 years ago, I've taught this class, at least 20 times, and each had at least 10 to 15 students in it. So I birthed a lot. I've, midwifed a lot of these chests into fruition, and a lot of them have carved their initials on my birth canal. That's a good thing. They're really wonderful systems. I mean, what's magic about the chests is a lot more than the joinery, actually. I mean, what's more important than the joinery, and that's the dovetail we cut. There are 2 dovetails in this chest. Woo! I got very excited there. What's more important than the joinery are the dimensions of the chest, and that sounds like a really stupid thing, like, ooh, the dimensions are everything. As you're putting this together, it's tempting to sort of change the dimensions that you use for whatever reason. You think, oh, I want a bigger chest, don't we all? Or I want a smaller chest. And I would say that, before you make that decision, to send an email and let's talk it over, because the standard chest size, which is like 38 to 40 inches long, and then 24 on 24 deep, is really designed very specifically to do some very special jobs. And changing any of those dimensions is going to diminish the chest in a way. If you make the chest any shorter than 38 inches long, then you're going to end up having trouble storing some of the really long tools that come along later on in your career. Like if you ever do get into using full-size rip saws, they're not going to fit. If you make the chest shorter than 24 inches, then you're really going to be doing, damage to your back. Because one of the big advantages of the 24 to 26 inch height of the chest is that you can make yourself this kind of human tripod. When you need a tool from the chest, you put your offhand on the rim of the chest. So I'm right-handed. So I would put my left hand on the rim of the chest and use my left hand to take the weight off my back as I went in with my right hand to grab a tool. You don't end up stooping all the time if you use this system, if you use your offhand to take the weight off your back. I don't have a great back, and I've never had a sore back using this chest. And I've been working out of a floor chest since '97, and just like a 2-year dalliance. This is a very long and disturbing relationship. The other thing is the 24-inch depth is also important. You make it, well, here I have it at 22, but that's inside to inside, 22 and a half. The 24-inch depth front to back is very important because if you make it narrower than that, you're going to make the chest tippy. Is that you'll end up knocking it and it won't be sturdy on its feet as you like it. The bigger American temptation is to make it deeper. Everything should be bigger. And so if you make it bigger, you also run into some serious problems, and that is that your arm will not reach into that back corner. So if you imagine here, underneath those tills there would be some molding plane, go down, or some other esoteric tool you're trying to get to back there. If you make that 26 inches or 28 inches, you'll never get back there. Your arm won't reach. So that 24-inch depth from with that corner-to-corner line on the right triangle is really key. So don't go changing. That's kind of the question. Or if you do go changing, give me a call first and we'll chat about it, or give me a shout. I mean, there are going to be some really reasons to change, which is it won't fit in my shop, or I don't have enough wood. Very common problem. But those are good reasons. The bad reason is that you think you have redesigned the tool chest that has been around for 400 years and has kind of proven itself. So you don't really get a chance to do that until you've lasted 400 years. All right, I've talked enough. Sorry, David, you have anything to say?
Kevin, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
This question's about the tools you need to build this chest. So I guess I'm a real beginner, and I don't actually have a saw, but I saw on the FAQ on the course website that you could replace it with a circular saw or jigsaw, and I was just wondering if you had any tips on how to use the circular saw to make those 38-inch cuts in the sheet of plywood straight.
Sure. The best thing to do is go to the Popular Woodworking website to the I Can Do That section, and there's a manual. There's the I Can Do That manual, which we wrote, gosh, I think in 2007. And it's a manual about how to put the circular saw to use like a table saw. And it shows you how to build an edge guide that will allow you to make really kind of cabinet saw grade cut with a circular saw. And it's a real simple thing anyone can make. You just have to have a circular saw to make it and a couple clamps. And you make that guide, and I have one down in my shop, and when I knock down goods, it's the same one I've used for years and years and years. So one of my recommendations would be to download that manual. It's totally free. You're not going to, nobody's going to come stalk you or anything. It's a totally free PDF manual, and that'll show you what you need to do. Number one, you need to get a decent blade for the circular saw. I think Freud has like a 40-tooth circ saw blade that's not much more than 10 or 20 bucks, and that will allow you to make really clean cuts in plywood. The other thing you need to do is you need some way to cut through the plywood and not into your floor or a driveway. And so the other thing I would recommend is go out and buy one of those 4x8 sheets of pink foam insulation and lay that on your driveway, slap the plywood on that, and then you can cut through that, and those things will last you for years before they get too chewed up. So, I mean, I have done a lot of plywood cutting on a driveway with a circ saw and an edge guide, and I can tell you that it's a great way to work. I don't have enough room in my shop to even knock down plywood without it. So it's totally doable, and with a little bit of care, you're going to have no problem.
Great question, Kevin. Thank you. Christian, you have your hand up as well. You have a question for Chris.
Yes. Hey, Chris. The Dutch tool chest you have on the picture we're looking at, is that saw? Is that a 26-inch saw?
Those are panel saws, correct. So you're looking at, they're not, I mean, they're not full-size saws. So they might be 26 inches, but they're 26 inches from, overall. I think those are 20-inch panel saws.
Okay.
So no,
Gotcha.
I wouldn't. The interior of the case is about 26 inches total. So there's a number 8 in there at the front that you can see, and that's 24 inches long, and then there's like 2 extra inches.
Gotcha. Okay.
And if you
Plenty
want
of room
that
for lots of
plan,
tools.
yeah, if you want a plan, give me a shout, and I'll email you the the SketchUp for that, for both of them. No problem.
Actually, post it on the blackboard too, Chris, and then everybody can just grab it off there.
Okay. Oh, hey,
Okay.
Christian. I didn't know it was Christian Coda. Hey, everyone, it's
Yep.
Christian Coda.
Yeah, I'm planning on building that Dutch tool chest to carry my tools for a particular bench build in July. So.
Yeah. Well, it's a very good project for that, and we'll have matching Dutch tool chests, and it'll and
All right.
we'll have to coordinate. Yeah. On the first day, I'm going to wear the pink Izod, so don't wear your pink Izod on the first day.
Okay. Well, I'll remember that.
Okay. One other thing I want to mention also is as far as the exterior, the paint. I use what's called a milk paint, and it has no milk in it because it doesn't spoil. This is the General Finishes milk paint, and it looks like a real authentic kind of casein-based paint, and it's tough as nails, but it lays out beautifully. So if you're trying to find the right color paint, definitely check General Finishes milk paint, but know that it has no milk in it. And then the other thing is to know that traditional painted finish didn't have any milk in them either. They had lead, and so you're not like violating any ethics of old whatever. This is just it's all marketing. Milk paint isn't really much of a historical finish anyway. And if some of you are really crazy, shoot me an email, or maybe we can post this on the blackboard. But I have some recipes for real traditional milk paint that you can make with quicklime, and you have to make a really nasty cork, which is kind of like a cheap feta. And I had one student, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say it. One student in Canada a couple months ago who's making his milk paint out of his wife's breast milk.
Oh.
Yeah, I know, pretty nasty. And I won't even tell you what the pigment is because it's so nasty. They'll shut us down. But but apparently the thing about breast milk is it has a lot of casein in it, and so it's going to be a really durable.
One of the other things that I was intrigued by, I always am, is how to make hardware that's way too shiny and new look a little older. And not everybody's probably gotten to these parts of the video. That's jumping a little bit ahead. But Chris, a couple of seconds on this one would be great.
Oh, you bet. If you want to strip this stuff, there are two ways to do it that I recommend. One is to buy some citric acid, and this is you can buy it at a health food store, or you can buy it off Amazon. Like I said before, there's a thing called Spicy World that sells citric acid, and it's cheap. 5 pounds will last you your whole lifetime. And you just take some warm water and you pour the citric acid in there, and then you dump the galvanized hardware in, and within about 30 minutes it'll strip off most of the nasty zinc. And the good thing I like about the citric acid is you can put your hands in it. I mean, it's very, very safe acid. And the only way you're going to know that you're in acid is if you have an open cut on your hand, and then you'll feel it. But otherwise, very safe. And the result from it is so mild, it can be just thrown down the drain without any worry. Citric acid is used in canning, like strawberries and blueberries and stuff like that. So it's stuff that's really quite food safe. So it's a safe way to do it. The other way to do it is with just sort of a white vinegar. You can buy white vinegar at the grocery store, and you can strip off the galvanized zinc off of the stuff, and that will take you down to a really dull, bare steel. The other way to do it that some people do is they'll take like a torch, like a propane torch, and burn the zinc off. If you do this, I'm not supposed to tell you to do it, but if you do it, do it outside. Wear a respirator, wear a body condom, whatever it takes. But it can produce some nasty fumes. Probably not going to hurt you, but I just had to tell you that that's not the way you should do it, person. And then we always quench it with some urine, and that always adds a nice patina to it and a good story.
In case there's no breast milk around, right?
In case there's no breast milk. If you can't quench in breast milk, boys, you quench urine. So this webinar is not going to sell.
Oh, no, you don't know. Well, we're almost there, guys. If you've got any other questions, shoot them now. Definitely what we'll do is once this, we will be posting the things that we've promised you tomorrow onto the Blackboard program, and definitely feel free to use that forum section on there, the discussion forum, to post any questions. The other folks can hear questions as well. That way you get to share, and you can actually communicate with each other that way too. And Chris will be checking on the emails, and I'll be checking as well in case he's trapped in Mark Adams in a class and I can't get to you right away. Ralph, you got your hand up. What have you got a question about? Ralph? Maybe.
I heard a cat.
That's
Ralph
fine.
and the cat? That's
Ralph
yours?
has a tough question.
Your cat's not allowed in this webinar. So Ralph's in the bathroom.
Well, I'm afraid I'm not hearing Ralph, your mic. So if you want to actually just type in your question in the panel, I can go ahead and read it too. Other than that, Chris, any suggestions to?
Build this thing. I mean, it's a 2-day tool chest, and you have 10 days. So come on. So that's 2 days of building, 8 days of drinking. Yeah, you can do it. It's a very simple project, and the 2-day thing is totally realistic. Take 2 days off. Get very sick. Right now, I think I can sense each of you has a fever, and if you just take off tomorrow and part of Saturday, you can have this test done, and then you can teach the webinar.
Okay, Nick, you've got your hand raised, and then I've got a question for Ralph. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on using solid wood versus plywood?
Yeah, we talk about that in the video, and I think the advantage to solid wood is it looks better because you don't have the raw plywood edges. And I think even if you are not able to glue up panels, you can buy some glued up panels. And we show that in the video that you can buy glue panels, which, you know, when they're painted, they're fine. You know, the funny thing about this project, though, is that if I had to do it again and again and again and again and again, I would use plywood. And the reason I would use plywood is because on all of those, what we would normally think of as end grain surfaces, those end grain surfaces have a lot of face grain on them. They're 50% face grain. So when you glue those fronts and those backs to those ends and you drive screws through them, you're making really an amazingly good joint. I mean, amazingly good considering, you know, that it's just glues and screws. Because that face grain bonds to the face grain of the mating surface. And so you get a lot of wood failure when these things fall apart. So I wouldn't default to solid wood thinking that you're going to get some advantage mechanically. You're not actually going to get a disadvantage mechanically. It's going to look better, so you're going to get an aesthetic advantage. But if I were, like I said, if I were going to do this again, I definitely would go with the plywood because I do know that it's stronger.
There you go. We're going to try Ralph again. Ralph, can we hear you now? Nope, still having difficulty.
Its water feature.
Well, Ralph, hopefully we can get your question either typed in or we can get it on Blackboard. We're almost there. Oh, wait, Bob has a question. He says, related to his earlier question, can you use cut nails for tongue and groove bottoms? And I'm not sure if that means. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, tongue and groove bottoms were designed for cut nails. And if anybody wants any sources for cut nails, you know, if you're going to put in a bottom, you're going to want to use clouts, C-L-O-U-T nails. And those are nails with a big old head. You don't want to use regular cut brabs for this because it's the head that holds things on. Tremont, Tools for Working Wood, Lee Valley, Rockler, they all sell cut nails. They're all made by Tremont here in the United States. But definitely get a clout nail. And if you're looking for a size, these are going to be, you know, if you're going to put the half-inch bottom on, you're going to need at least a 4-penny clout nail. Even a 5-penny would probably do if you can get one, 5 or 6 penny. But 4-penny will be fine. But definitely get a clout.
Bob wants to know, that's okay into plywood as well?
Oh yeah, you bet. You can nail plywood with a cut nail. It's just, yeah, there's no issues whatsoever. Like with any cut nail, you have to experiment before you drive your first nail. So do a sample joint with a sample pilot hole you know, that's positioned as far away from the edge as you plan to position the pilot hole from the edge, so that you know if it's going to blow up on you. Actually, plywood and cut nails work together really well because plywood doesn't split like solid wood does. So you can actually disobey a lot of rules. Don't tell anybody I said this. I will lose my hand tool credibility card. But you can actually use cut nails and plywood with it, disregarding all the rules about wedging, because plywood and cut nails are actually a dangerous match made.
Great. Okay, guys, whoa, Keith snuck another one in. Keith, we got one more question.
This is completely ridiculous. You can't do this.
Keith?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, great. Chris, you mentioned vinegar earlier, and most grocery stores carry 5% acidity vinegar, and I know 10% acidity is better. Is there a cheap source for that I just don't know about?
No, I can't think of any really good cheap source that I know of. That's why I like this. I prefer the citric acid. You know, it's, you know, go to a food store or a canning store and just go citric acid, because you can also use that for rust removal and all those other things. But I don't know of a good source for 10% vinegar. You stumble on it sometimes, but yeah, you're right. Usually it's the weak stuff that's no fun.
Yep. Okay.
Good enough. Chris, final thoughts?
Just build it and send me a picture and get that photo of me with the pouty lips off the screen. That is really, thank you, David. That's not good. That's bad. That's much better. Yeah, build the chest and shoot me an email. I'm happy to help guys in any way. I can't imagine you'll have too many questions, but it's fairly straightforward. But if you do, we're here to help, and we appreciate you signing on for this. And I hope at the end of this we have 26, 27 nicely made chests, and I've birthed some more.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks everybody for attending. Again, feel free to use the Blackboard to chat amongst yourself, and certainly any questions that we can give you answers to, and certainly to get in touch with Chris. Thanks a lot, and good luck with the project, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks.
All right. Good night, guys.